So welcome to our bi-weekly Earthholder Online Sangha gathering. Today we have a very special gathering. We have our presenters, Sister True Dedication, Alex Nunn, and our very own Simona Coayla-Duba, who is here with us to share about the new book, Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. Before we begin, just to make sure everyone is comfortable with the tech, we will be mostly muted so that we can maintain focus during the session, and the chat disabled. If you do have any tech problems, feel free to chat directly with me, Sister True Val, and I'll do my best to help troubleshoot with you. Today we're going to be having a presentation, an opening practice led by Sister True Dedication, followed by a Dharma sharing, by a presentation by our three presenters, followed by a shorter Dharma sharing than usual, so that we can have space for questions and answers. So without further ado, I'd like to present our three presenters. Sister True Dedication is the editor of Thay's latest book, Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, which was just published this year, as well as his books, The Art of Living and Love Letters to the Earth. In the early years of her monastic training, she assisted Thay and Shikojan Kum in their engaged Buddhist actions for human rights, religious freedom, applied ethics, and ecology, accompanying them on official visits to international parliaments, the US Congress, and the Vatican. Sister True Dedication is the co-founder of the International Wake Up Movement, a community of young meditators who are finding new ways to combine mindfulness and engaged Buddhism. She currently resides at Plum Village in Southwest France, where she spends her time and energy deepening her meditation practice, sharing Thay's teachings with a wide audience online and offline, editing Thay's writings, and guiding a new generation of monastics. So welcome, Sister True Dedication. Our second presenter is Alex Nunn, True Pure Pleasure, who is a passionate activist, facilitator, and public speaker who promotes the connection between compassion and social change. Simona, would you be able to help me pin our Sister True Dedication, Alex, and you as I present so people can see? Thank you. He believes that by turning towards the feelings that come up around global issues, we can unlock the power to really take action while also nourishing and restoring ourselves. Alex is head of movement building at Action for Happiness, a movement for a happier and more caring society. He's also a regional community builder for the Earthholder Network, a Buddhist environmentalist group founded by Thay, and an ambassador in training of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research at Stanford University. And lastly, Simona Coayla-Duba, dancing presence, resides on the lands of the Quechua people in Urubamba, Peru, at the base of Apu Chicon, I hope I'm saying this right, and Apu Pumahuanca. Simona is the Earthholder Community Coordinator, member of the Wake Up Earthholders, and an Earthholder Regional Community Builder. She's also a trail runner, a rock climber, and a tea drinker. She enjoys weaving webs of community resilience and uncovering pockets of joy. So thank you, and please everyone join me in welcoming our three presenters. And now I'll turn it over to Sister True Dedication for our opening practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Sister True Val, dear Siko. Thank you for this warm introduction. It's so lovely to be here with you all, and so nice to be able to connect with the Earthholder Sangha and to be in Plum Village and to do so. It's wonderful to know that you're all there. I love always to scroll through and to smile at you all. So I'll just take a little moment to do that, to really feel your presence and enjoy the familiar faces. So if you know me, I know you. And I'm smiling to you. Wonderful, wonderful. I see many of my spiritual mentors on this call as well. So you have to forgive me for being a young one. I guess we take it in turns to play at yeah, sharing our practice. So thank you for your compassion. So I would like to offer a short guided practice to start our session. And it's always wonderful before we do this to really just check in with our body. This is the one part of the call where we want to pay a bit more attention to our posture. We may want to roll open our shoulders a little bit. You know, if we're leaning against something, to see what shape that's giving our back, and might it be better. This practice will take about 10 minutes, maybe a little less. So find a position that you can feel comfortable in for this period of time, and where your lungs really have enough space to kind of open and breathe, and that our face muscles can relax a little bit. And it's always nice to wriggle our fingers. Devices kind of take control of our hands a lot of the time. So it's nice to remove some of the tension that might be there in our hands, and just so nice to not be holding anything. And then we can gently place one hand in the other and place it in our lap. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes for this practice, or if not, keep your eyes gently cast down so that the muscles around our eyes can rest. And we can gently invite our mouth to smile a little bit. This is the smiling yoga part of the session, where we challenge ourselves. Even if we're not in the mood, might we be able to smile a little bit to ourselves and to our beloved Sangha friends in this moment. And I will invite 3 sounds of the bell for us to begin. In touch with my breathing, I breathe in, and in touch with my body, I breathe out. Aware of my breathing, aware of my body. Breathing, body. Smiling gently to my breathing as it flows in. Smiling gently to my body as I breathe out. And opening my inner eye, my senses, to be in touch with the earth as a living, breathing organism. In touch with the earth as a living, breathing organism, I breathe in and smiling to the wonder of the earth, I breathe out. The earth, living and breathing, smiling in wonder. Breathing in, the earth breathes in with me. Breathing out, smiling with the earth. Getting in touch with the quality of stability of the earth. I breathe in, admiring the perseverance, the forbearance of the earth, even in the face of calamities. I breathe out, opening my heart to the stability of the earth as I breathe in, witnessing the perseverance, the forbearance of the earth. Breathing in, I experience the stability. Breathing out, I experience the perseverance, the endurance of this beautiful planet. Breathing in, I get in touch with the creativity of the earth. Breathing out, I savor the wonder of the sounds, the colors, the creativity of Earth's life forms. Breathing in, touching the nature of creativity of the earth. Breathing out, savoring the sounds, colors, and miraculous wonders of the earth. Breathing in, I touch that all-embracing quality of non-discrimination of the earth. nurturing and caring for all of us. As I breathe out, I admire the capacity of the earth to welcome back and bring to life all forms of life. Appreciating the non-discrimination of the earth, embracing us all as I breathe in, earth welcoming back and bringing us to life again and again. Breathing in, I see myself as a child of this planet. Breathing out, I feel a deep love for this planet Earth, my home. Child of the earth, deep love, my home. Aware that I am a part of the wonderful pattern of life stretching out in all directions, I breathe in, smiling to this wonderful pattern of life. I breathe out. Wonderful pattern of life. Smiling. Thank you, everyone, for this beautiful moment together. We can shake out our body a little bit, make sure we're still alive and enjoying the wonderful pattern of life in us. Those of us that are able to can do a little head massage, celebrate not having any hair, if there are a few of us, so we have nice short hair. And I'll hand it over back to Simona. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sister True Dedication, for the wonderful opportunity to settle in, to smile, to feel connected. So just to, let's see here, just doing a little bit of tech. There we are. You might hear a dog barking. We have a new family member here in Urubamba at the house we're at, a furry family member. And so I'm happy to get a little bit of sharing started just about celebration for Zen and the art of saving the planet. I'm happily in the pages, turning the pages, practicing, and it's been a wonderful way to just start my day. I read in the mornings and I enjoy a cup of tea and I turn the pages. And every day that I go through and read this, I find myself becoming connected with my community, both human and non-human, with myself, and especially with the land. And I think one of the takeaways right now that I'd like to share here is that we are enough. Everyone here on this call is enough just by being here. I find that it's so common within environmental movement spaces, within any movement space, as that it's like there's this aspiration to do more, which comes from such a beautiful, loving, caring, passionate spot. And also just being able to make a cup of tea in the morning and nourish myself is enough. It's just enough to care for myself and to calm those moments where maybe it can feel like there's fighting on the inside, a war on the inside. That was a takeaway from some pages I was turning today, that war can cease. And it's also feeling very fitting just to announce them today. Maybe some of you have all seen that there's going to be a 4-part online book club for Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet happening with the new year. So January 10th is the first date that this is going on, and it's being offered by the regional community builders. And it is an invitation for everyone here on this call. If you would like to maybe show up and just enjoy the book together, if you would like to show up and study the practices, there's lots of home practice that are included in this book. And if you would like to offer it to your local Sangha, so your on the ground Sanghas, if maybe you're having a conversation about whether you want to read the book together and you're not quite sure how to go about it, this is a place to come and share a format. So I'm going to put that in the chat, and then I'm going to pass the mic to my dear friend and brother, Felix. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Simona, and welcome, friends. Such a joy to be with you. It is a joy. I was feeling some tension across my chest, and I was sort of in a space of a little bit of confusion. I have to confess. I'm going to be here to represent imperfection, I think, as a practitioner and as an activist, and to kind of make sure there's space for that and for myself in that. I've read just a few pages of this book. I'm kind of relishing it and really looking forward to our book group in the new year. But I felt like, oh, I'm speaking. I need to have read more. I need to have done more. So I'm so appreciative to Simona of going straight into this place of kind of holding for that. And I want to say a few more words to that. That, you know, the calling we can feel as caring people and as practitioners as we become more sensitive to our feelings and emotions can, in a world of so much beauty but also so much suffering, feel a bit like too much. And there's a kind of can never do enough that arises, and a kind of sense of inadequacy that I then find myself running away from. And that running away can even take, for me, actually, I've noticed the form of action and climate activism. I catch myself sometimes on the streets holding placards in activist circles and spaces, trying to do more in order to bring about change and inspire others, but noticing that I'm actually running away from myself in those very moments. And some of my happiest and most privileged to be alive moments are when I spot that, and a kind of bell of mindfulness rings somewhere in the background of my mind, and I find myself walking more slowly on those streets and holding what message I'm holding a little differently, and noticing the effect of that kind of bell radiating out through me into others. It's profound how much a small intervention in the kind of social fabric can ripple out and change the feeling that everybody is experiencing. And I highly recommend you, if you are someone that is inclined to that sort of space, a collective activism space, to experiment with how you can be a bell for others in that space. You may notice some magical things beginning to happen. And I'm hugely grateful to have discovered that and to be a very early stages practitioner in that field. And I feel incredibly grateful to have this wonderful book that may have a slightly different cover than some of you have seen. This is the UK version, speaking from London. But to know that through this book, I'm connected to my brothers and sisters in Plum Village, and through them also to Thay, and to know that when I walk in the streets and find a way of really being with my breath, my body, finding calming paces, I'm also walking with Thay in Vietnam as the bombs fall, finding a deep rootedness in that practice that has carried him to so much powerful action of transformation in the world. And that is an incredible privilege. And I want to say a huge thank you, particularly to Sister True Dedication, who's been so instrumental in bringing this book about. So yeah, that's probably my space. And yeah, great honor and privilege to hand over to my sister right now. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Alex. I think the enoughness question is a koan for us all. It's the enoughness, and what is enough? Am I enough? What would be enough? And what would be an action that each one of us can contribute that would have an impact? And I think for all of us in our own daily life of practice, this is what we're all asking. What could I do? Where can I put my energy? How can I balance nourishment with action? How can I live each moment fully, as it seems that we want to change the moment, right? There are so many inconsistencies when we bring our spiritual Buddhist teachings in connection with our environmental activism. And so for those of you who have just read a few pages or might not have read much of this lovely book, which has got a lot of love in it, by the way, it does open with a beautiful section of Thay's teachings about the Diamond Sutra. And so for those of us that haven't yet read the book, or maybe we went quite quickly over those pages, I would like to invite us all that there is a lot of beautiful practice koans in the teachings of the Diamond Sutra, and they really point to what are the deepest offerings from more than 1,000 years of Mahayana Buddhism that are encapsulated in the Diamond Sutra and in the whole treasure store of Buddhist wisdom, 2,500 years. What can they offer us when we are faced with the question, what can I do and how can I be? And the last few weeks, I've had quite a lot of opportunities to speak about the earth and the climate and Thay's teachings and this book. But what is alive for me today that I'd like to share is just a couple of points. One is, well, I've been sharing with everyone, please fall in love with the earth. But I think today I probably don't need to share that with earth holders, because I think your daily practice is to fall in love with the earth. And I think you're probably the most professional group in the Sangha at this topic. So everyone else, I'm letting them know that they should fall in love with the earth. And we had a wonderful evening with the Sangha in Southeast Asia and Singapore the other day. And I invited them to have a go on a date on the weekend, go on a date with a tree and give themselves, half an hour or 45 minutes to get to know a tree, if they could find a tree in downtown Singapore, and try and find a window to fall in love with the earth if they hadn't yet done so. But I'm not going to talk about that today. What I wanted to talk about a little bit in my few minutes is just about the insight of interbeing. And many of us, we're very familiar with this. We know that interbeing is at the core of Thay's teachings. And for me, I think there's like two ways that, or at least two ways that this is very important for us as activists. And the first is the point about the interbeing of the three times. The interbeing of the three times. The three times are the past, the present, and the future. And this is like a koan for all of us to sit with, breathe with, walk with, and act with. And what I've realized in the last few weeks is the reason why this is so important is that sometimes the burden of the present moment can feel very great. And that is if we think that we are carrying it only on our shoulders. But we have to be able to see ourselves as this stream of ancestors who have also participated in this, and it's just our turn, and we will hand on to the next generation. And that can really help remove this burden and this pressure that we may feel. And it also allows us to take refuge in both our heritage and also our role as future ancestors for generations to come. So in some sense, it can give us the enoughness. If we can really touch the interbeing of the three times and look deeply into our own life, into the natural world around us, into situations that are difficult for us right now, and look into the past and the future of those situations, that can give us this feeling of enoughness, and to be able to rest and to take refuge while taking action. And the other part of interbeing is that the one contains the all. And we may feel that a simple action can never be enough, or in our lifetime, that can never be enough. But according to the principles of the one containing the all, every act is in its way kind of like limitless in its resonance and reverberations. And so this is very important, how we apply the teaching of interbeing, and really bring it home to those moments that are crunch points where we feel that we are not enough, feel that we can't choose the right action, and to really see, can we see the resonance of whatever way in which we are contributing, and to not think that there are countless, there are infinite ways that we can make a positive contribution, and to trust in that and to hold that in our sitting practice, in our walking practice, and in our engaged action, whatever form it takes. And the final way which the insight of interbeing is very important is in the principle of not taking sides. And this is a very hard teaching. And it's hard for me individually. It's hard often for us monastics as we embrace the fact that we are Thay's spiritual children. And Thay's mantra is that we do not take sides in a conflict. And as we know, those lines also appear in the Order of Interbeing, the 14 mindfulness trainings. So this is very interesting because ecologically, we can slice that cake in many ways, right? And you can have many sides. And for example, you can have the oil CEOs on one side, and we can have youth activists on another side. And when we were in our engaged actions around COP26, we had a chance to be in a room with an oil CEO and a youth activist. And our role is to hold space for both of them. And that can seem impossible. But the way it becomes possible is because of the insight of interbeing, of deep looking, and our profound interconnection, like as human beings. We all contain all the seeds. And my concentration in that moment, in that room, was that even the oil CEO, he has the seed of compassion and awakening in him. And he may not have had anyone who has sparked it, but that is our role as practitioners, is to help spark the seeds of awakening even across the divide. There's a lot more I could share about that. And the great news is that in that particular moment, there was conflict, but the resolution happened last week, which is that the youth activists' request for Shell Oil Company to pull out of that particular drilling project was successful, and Shell did pull out last week, which for me is a real fruition of this very intense moment back in October between these two human beings. So that's just some examples of how we also as monastics are practicing with some of Thay's teachings. And I think one of the best sections in the book, the strongest sections of Thay's teachings and the stories that we weave in, is around communication, deep listening, and handling kind of polarization and not taking sides. Thank you so much for listening to me. I will hand back. I went slightly over. I'm sorry. I'll hand back to our facilitators. Thank you so much.
So next, we're going to have a session of question and answer. And we will be asking you to raise your digital virtual hand if you have a question that you'd like to pose directly to our presenters. We'll also be taking written questions, but we'll prioritize the questions that are spoken indirectly. And for our friends on the phone, you can also call in to ask your question if you'd like. So Simona will keep an eye for the hands. Please feel free to raise your hands, and we'll take them in according to the order of volunteering. We'll have about 30 to 35 minutes for this next session. So we'll take one question at a time. And now the space is open. Thank you. Feel free also, once we ask you to ask your question, to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sister Truva. Dear friends, we already have 2 hands raised. And just a reminder to raise hands. If you look at the bottom toolbar on your Zoom screen, it's reactions, open that, and there's a raised hand. And all right, I'm seeing that Nam was the, and please correct me if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. Nam, raise your hand first, and then Mayra.
So I have one personal question regarding the practice. So in the right concentration, one of the element of I know for part. When we train our mind to a certain state, we will be able to observe the perception or consciousness is just a mental formation. Is it only human could be able to be aware, or to do as human do, like to meditate, to be aware of things, or it happened in every other species as well? So I mean, I haven't reached to that mental state. This state is a multiple one. I would want to seek advice and from you guys. I'm curious. Yes, thank you.
dear folks, will we take a few questions, or should we just go for it and jump in, or how would we like to do this?
How about one question at a time?
Okay,
Unless you prefer a
wonderful.
couple, we can gather a couple if you prefer.
Okay, no, that's cool. I'm happy to volunteer to take this one if that's okay. So thank you, Nam, for this question. So often, Thay always says concentrating is always concentrating on something, right? So we can concentrate on a sunflower, we can concentrate on the sunset, we can concentrate on our own body. So right concentration is appropriate attention, sustained with mindfulness. And as we keep our mindfulness and our awareness there, it might be concentration on a carrot that we're about to eat. Okay. And right concentration is not to feel so guilty that we have a carrot, or to start worrying about all the fertilizers that are in the carrot. But right concentration would be, wow, this is the fruit of the earth, the sun, the sky, and to really be able to nurture our gratitude and our awareness as we do it. And you were mentioning mental formations. So sometimes we can also become aware of our states of mind. So sorrow is a state of mind, excitement is a state of mind, anxiety is a state of mind. And I think all of us who have domesticated animals or have been close to animals, I think we know that there are very sophisticated and developed consciousnesses in the animal kingdom. And Thay even said that a seed or a bamboo stand also have their own ways of knowing, their own kind of consciousness. And you can find some wonderful research. There's a scientist, a biologist, who's done some research on all the mammal emotions, and his name is Yak Pansap. Let me I will write it in the chat, but there's a beautiful scientist, and he identified 7 states of mind that we share with animals, including, for example, play, the mental formation of playfulness we share with the animal kingdom. Also the many other ones. So you can look that up after this call. But thank you for this lovely question. Thank you.
Thank you, Nam. Thank you for a wonderful response, Sister Truva, Sister True Dedication, and Sister Truva. Thank you for fielding the questions here. Mayra, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Sister True Dedication. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, you all. You mentioned not taking sides, and I guess we were talking about it in my room. We'll face a very hard year next year. It's our election year. So we are planning to do the circles of dialogue with, let's say, their sides, and try to listen to their fascism or whatever. But I know it's going to be hard, because it's easy to know that I have it too in me. I know we all have those seeds, but in the moment of in the heat of the moment, it's hard not to let those seeds manifest and want to kill them all. So do you have any tip or anything to say? Because we are having, well, we have to do that because it's just what we are having to do now, but it's hard. So please help me. And thank you so much. Bowing out.
I feel moved, so I'll bow in. Just thank you Maria. Yeah, thank you so much for recognizing and calling that in. I know you're close to the lungs and the heart of the world, and all of us, particularly in the global north, owe activists where you are so much, and whatever work you are doing to practice being a beacon of compassion in a suffering world is incredibly valuable and important, and I so appreciate you bringing that. I also, in my own country, have to practice in terms of understanding how I respond to the leadership and the politics of the country that I'm in. And I guess the only thing I can offer by way of understanding is to say that the call is not to some kind of, as I see it, some new way of judging ourselves as successful or unsuccessful in the practice. The call is to open up and awaken awareness to the effect of allowing hatred to course through us. I notice in myself the quality of mind that I bring to my interactions with my family, with fellow activists, with the world, has a real effect on others, and it has an effect on myself. And the more that we are able to create a space in which that can be witnessed, the more there is a chance that compassion can arise and to kind of surround and to help to bring transformation into that. And like a heavy weight builds big muscles, the scale and weight of that situation that you find yourself enmeshed in is giving you a wonderful opportunity to grow an even bigger heart to spread goodness into the world. And it couldn't be more necessary. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Maya. We do not have any written questions, so we can continue with the direct questions, Simona. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Mayra, for the beautiful question, and Alex for such a wonderful response. I'm seeing Luis, a hand raised.
Thank you. I think it's wonderful. I think my question builds on Myra's question in a way. I was reading the book last night before I fell off to sleep, and it's a good way to water seeds for dreams and integration. I do that. And I was reading the chapter Love Without Boundaries, where Thay talks about the energy of love. And he's talking about the part of it that is karuna, compassion. And he says, I read this paragraph and I had to groggily get my pencil out and make a question mark in the margin because I really wanted to ask a question about, I wanted to understand this better, maybe through a story. He's talking about creating a collective energy of compassion. And he says it's one of the best things we can offer to humankind and other species. And then he says something very familiar: compassion is made only of non-compassion elements. So the art is to make use of those non-compassion elements like fear, anger, and despair to create compassion. This is where the question started to form, like, how does that happen? Would somebody please show me a film or tell me their story of how they transformed the non-compassion elements into collective compassion? And then he says, if we know how to handle the suffering we have in the world, we can transform it back into compassion and love. Well, could someone please tell a story that that helps us get a feel for doing this, because I think this is very big. That's my question.
I'm happy to share, but Simona, do you have anything? You haven't responded yet?
Thank you, sister. I'm actually really eager to hear what you have to say, and I might piggyback on it.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you, Louise. So lovely to be with you, even virtually, and lovely to see you. Thank you for this question. So, this passage relates to Thay's teachings on what he called the mechanics of compassion, how we generate compassion. And these teachings arose during the time that we were at Stanford University. So there's a talk you can find on YouTube of Thay at Stanford University, and it's called Conversations on Compassion. And then we returned to Plum Village very soon after that. And then he gave another talk here in Plum Village because he wasn't satisfied. He said, I want to go deeper into how we generate compassion. And so he said, we have to understand it as there's a mechanics of compassion, that compassion doesn't arise in the abstract. It doesn't it arises in relation to the suffering that we feel in ourselves or that we witness in the world. And so for Thay, compassion arises in direct connection with suffering. So the ones named in this passage are fear, despair, anger. And so concretely, you would like a story. Well, there's one that you know very well already, which is the story of the sea pirate and Please Call Me by My True Names, and that beautiful poem of Thay's, where that was a painful moment. The news of this assault on the boat was a painful story for Thay. And he sat with what we can only imagine must have been despair, anger, and real distress on his own part, but also on behalf of others. And compassion arose through the exercise of deep looking into the perpetrator. So for those of you who don't know, you can look up Thay's poem, Please Call Me by My True Names. And it's in Thay's book, which is also called Call Me by My True Names. The book of his poems has that. Okay, that's the collection. And so what is happening when Thay gets this news, Thay sits down, perhaps Thay goes for a walk. Thay is having strong feelings. And it's really important to remember that Thay also had anger, right? That's how he can write a book called Anger. Thay also had all of these feelings just like we all do. And Thay learned how to practice with them. And we know that the antidote to anger is compassion. So all our feelings, they have something that we can cultivate that is an appropriate antidote, that as soon as we have compassion, we can't have so much anger. So these two, they're like two sides of one coin. They kind of go together. Just like, for example, joy in the present moment is an antidote to sorrow. And it's a very fun game for you to explore, for each of us to explore our mental formations and what's the antidote for the different ones as they come up. So their energies, it's not exactly bypassing or ignoring them, but there are two energies that have a relationship to each other. And when we have the one, it already embraces the other. So for me, it's about having the right dose of suffering to be able to generate the compassion, right? And maybe we don't start with the former president of America, like of the United States. Like maybe that's not where we start with our compassion. Maybe we start with a colleague or someone in our family who we haven't yet understood properly. So we lean into a point in our life where there is some friction, some pain. And for example, if it's in a relationship, first of all, So for example, I was at home supporting my family this spring and I ran out of compassion for my father, like may happen to some of us. It was a very difficult family situation and I ran out of compassion. But I kept knocking on the door of, I've just got to recognize and hold his suffering and that will generate my compassion. But then I realized the first place of compassion had to be for myself, because his words had hurt me over and over too many times, and his actions had hurt me and my family members. So actually the compassion needed to go in other directions first. So to contemplate that suffering, to be with it, to generate the compassion and hold my suffering and the suffering of my family. And then when finally I could be with that and then also seek guidance from wise ones around me, I was then able to again open up my embrace to include my father within it. So compassion arises in contact with those painful feelings in ourselves and in the world. And part of the art is to work out where we go first so that the compassion can arise, you know, like we can't put a sapling right out in the sunshine right away. Like, I mean, we've got to nurture that energy of compassion gently so that it can steadily grow to include those who are the hardest to include. And one final thing that Sister Khong, when we had to meet some difficult people once, when we had to go around some different parliaments and meet people that I guess I felt were the other side very clearly. Sister Khong, well, first of all, Thay told us, he said, you have to have eye contact. Look in their eyes and look into the seed of compassion that is there in their heart. Everyone has the seed of compassion. It just might be very, very small. So Thay was big on eye contact. And Sister Khong's guidance was, you just kind of beam at them, like just this laser beam focus of just, she didn't even give them space to like not agree with her proposal or her compassionate action. She just, you know, sometimes I think you can have a kind of like, what would you call it? Yeah, laser beam of compassion where people don't have a chance but for their seed to come up in response. And so I think it's something about, again, appropriate attention, in enough contact with suffering that we can generate. And of course, compassion is also coming from insight, right? We understand the causes and conditions. We are sorry for the terrible causes and conditions that led to this bad state of affairs. And that perpetrator is also a victim of being a perpetrator, right? I mean, they are themselves a victim of being in that role in many cases. So this is a start, and maybe Simona would like to share a few reflections to build on that. But thank you for such a good question.
Thank you for such a wonderful response. I have a little piggyback of a story, and I'm also aware of where we're at with time. So I want to check in with Sister True Vow.
We're good to go. And if everyone does have space to extend, including our presenters, after the designated time, we'll be happy to hold the space open for another 15 minutes if there are further questions. Thank you.
I'm open to this. How's everyone? Okay. All right. So it seems like we'll be extending, and just so everyone on the call knows that if you need to be logging off, then just leave as you must. We're happy that you've been here. So the piggyback story that it arose as I was listening to Sister True Dedication. Takes place in the highlands of Peru. There's a woman, her name is Maxima Acuna. She is one of my, I believe, spiritual heroes. And she's a farmer. She's a guardian. She's a steward of the earth. And she has tended and cared for the land where she currently resides for her whole life. It's her family's land. And this land also happens to be at a point in Peru that is halting the construction of a major mine. And the mining company in the past 10 years has repeatedly gone to her, trying to first buy the land, then approaching her with threats when she wouldn't sell the land, putting a fence around her property, around the place where she lives, having watch guards just outside of the fence watching her family, coming at her family with violence, all in order so they could continue a mining project. And her family have continuously decided to say no. And even after all of the threats and the violence and the disrespect, the dehumanizing ways that this company has decided to be in relationship with Maxima Acuna and her family, she has begun to travel. She's begun to leave her home, which she loves so much, her family, to be able to speak about this happening. And I believe, and it's, I've had the opportunity to be in rooms where Maxima Acuna was speaking, where she shared songs and stories from the Andes. And it was very clear that each time she was so moved, and each time she was traveling out of compassion, out of love for the earth. It wasn't a travel for pleasure seeking, right? It wasn't a vacation to leave her home and be in the United States. And so from this, I'm sharing a point of pain, of anger. I could feel and see all these things, and yet speaking out of compassion and hope and love for the earth. And I think, and for this mining company to be able to feel that as well. So that's the story that arose in this moment. And so thank you for the opportunity to be able to share about, I believe sometimes the ordinary and yet extraordinary people of this world. So Simona, bowing out.
Thank you, Sister Dedication. Thank you, Simona. We have a question from Bev. And for our friends who might need to leave at 1:30, we will have the full recording of this session on the YouTube channel, the Earthholder YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out. Thank you. I'd like to invite Bev to share.
Thank you. At first, I didn't have a question, but the questions gave rise to a question in me, which is, it's a question of power. And I've seen how when people perceive that someone has a lot of power, and they're doing things that somebody doesn't like or feels made less of, they'll get very angry, and I see that in myself. And so that's a big question to me, is how do you look at someone who seems to have a lot of power, who is using that power to do harm? It's very hard to look at that person with compassion. And so that's what my question is.
I'm happy to kick off some sharing. Thank you, Bev. Yeah, that's it's interesting what you've just shared, and what it's triggered in me, a kind of awareness of how, I was thinking about power, and I was thinking about wealth, how somehow the richer people become, the more desperately they seem to need to become richer still. And the more kind of narrowly focused, sort of these people, right at the top of our society, the kind of billionaire class, funding their private missions to Mars, and these, incredibly damaging and incredibly narrowly focused worlds. I think I'm fortunate that I do have insight in there into how desperately lonely that must be, and how much, and that will to power and the will to need to have more is kind of this hungry ghost expression of a desperation. I'm in touch with those elements in myself. I see that in myself in smaller scale ways, and so through that I do have a sense of compassion, but the compassion that arises directly in response to the awareness of suffering. And if we cannot see the suffering, we can't really expect compassion. And sometimes it takes time to sit with, to look deeply, in order for that to become clear enough that compassion sort of upswells within us. But that compassion is not a way of excusing the bad practices or bad behavior of people, or a way of kind of thinking less of it in some way. It's in fact quite the opposite, a sort of determined spiritual will for that suffering to cease, is how it seems to express in me. And I find that hugely an empowering and fortifying state to be in. But as I say, one that takes time to sit with, and to appreciate, and to be sensitive towards. But I feel a great sense of support and faith in the knowledge that when that compassion arises, it in itself can be a force of healing in the world, and can help to take away some of those conditions that are feeding into the suffering that we're addressing. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Wonderful. Dear Sangha, we have a couple of minutes, so if anyone has one last question that we can pose for our presenters, we would love to hear from you, either written or spoken. They've been very lovely and very concrete questions so far. Okay. If not, I'm sure as we continue with the study of the book, then these questions will continue to arise. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful participation. So before we close, I was wondering, Sister True Dedication, would you care to share any last words?
Thank you, dear Sukho. Well, there is a section on power in the book. I'm sorry to say it. You can find it in the last section, and so I hope you, especially those who do the book club, that will be fun for you. And we look at what we call the 3 forms of spiritual power, and I think when we can taste what real spiritual power might be like, which involves compassion, involves insight and understanding and letting go. And also Thay speaks about the power to not need anything, like the power to live simply gives you a huge amount of freedom, because we're not craving material resources, we're not craving being dominant over others or anything else. We have a real ease and freedom. So anyway, there's lots of that to sort of explore in the book, but also I think for me where the koan is all of us have made a choice about our own life and how we would like to spend our energy, right? And what we would like our legacy and continuation to be. And when we see these people who are caught in their craving, who are caught in their negativity, that it will also be their continuation, that they in this lifetime haven't had a chance to take care of in themselves those things that will enable a better continuation of legacy for them. And for me, it's when I realize, wow, their legacy looks like that. For that's their signature on the world, is that. And somehow for me, I realize they haven't had a chance to have a spiritual path. They haven't had a chance to look deeply into their hearts and address their real concerns. And for me, somehow it's in that space that I find more compassion, because that is their continuation, and we as practitioners, we have a certain freedom on this path of healing, and that will be our continuation. And it's wonderful for us and for all of you. Thank you, Bev, for this important question. And thank you for this wonderful call. I know Sister True Vow will wrap up, but it's been so wonderful to be with you all, to hear your questions, to breathe together, share together, and just, enjoy feeling so connected. So thank you all so much. And thank you to Simona and Alex for being here with me. It's so wonderful to be in your company and to learn so much also from your own depth of practice and experience. So thank you both. And thank you, dear Sister True Vow, for being such a great facilitator.
Thank you, Sister True Dedication. Very lovely and heartwarming sharing today. So before we do wrap up, I'd just like to share in our chat a number of resources for us again. About the book signing. The book club. You can find the link for the book club. And if you're interested if you haven't already ordered the book, then there are links to the two publishers. Parallax is out of stock right now, but HarperCollins apparently does have that available. And if you're interested in furthering the conversation about how to bring in our Dharma study about earth holding and bringing it into a place of action, I've included John Bell's email. There are a number of groups starting to coalesce around this idea of mindful action with regard to earth holding. And lastly, if you are interested in supporting the practices and the support system that we all are for one another as earth holders, you may like to consider offering dana. The link is also included. Thank you very much to our presenters, Sister True Dedication, Alex, Felix, and Simona. And thank you for all of you for being present. And together I see that we are all keeping the flame of love, care, compassion, not just alive, but quite warm, quite strong, individually and collectively as a community. We look forward to seeing you again in the different earth holding spaces, whether it's with this online Sangha or in the various smaller groups that we always encourage one another to continue creating and maintaining. And we may be interested in exploring amongst ourselves on a local level, those who are interested in earth holding, how we can continue to bring in these nourishing elements of study and practice and action together so that we can continue to maintain that flame. So to close, perhaps you'd like to just close your eyes and come into contact with your body. You might like to come into contact with your heart, the rise and fall of your chest as we breathe in and out. Just touching again all the nourishment of today's session. Many things to reflect on, to digest, and to then bring into our daily life, bring out into the world. So may the merit of our practice, our presence together, and our aspirations manifested benefit ourselves, our loved ones, all beings, our Mother Earth. And a deep bow to all of us, Mother Gaia's to be. Thank you. And as we leave, you might like to unmute yourself